Welcome to another episode of the Influential Experts Podcast. I'm your host, Robert Hicks, and today we'll be speaking with personal injury attorney Henry Queener, discussing the complexities of product liability cases, exploring how defects in consumer products can impact individuals, and the legal strategies involved in seeking justice for those affected. For those of you unfamiliar with Henry Queener specializes in handling auto accident lawsuits and other motor vehicle accident cases. He's recognized as one of the top 100 national trial lawyers, and he has successfully recovered millions of dollars for his clients. Henry is distinguished for his skills as both a negotiator and as a tenacious litigator, prepared to take cases to trial to secure full and fair financial recovery for his clients. Henry, thank you so much for coming on our show today.
Thank you for having me, Bobby. Good to be here.
Yeah. So let's dive in. We've not talked a lot about product liability cases or anything like that before. Let's talk a little bit more about that. How do you determine if a product defect directly caused the injury in a product liability case?
Well, sometimes it's just evident on its face. We have a couple of cases where people purchased things on the internet and then they got them home and the batteries burst into flames and either severely hurt them or severely burned up part of their house. And so it's obvious that when you buy something online and it has batteries in it, those batteries should not burst into flames unexpectedly. So sometimes just really evident on its face, like dust mops or like floor mops. They have batteries in them that spray the floor spray out in front of them, and you'll get them, and they'll come with batteries already in them,
Mm-hmm.
and cheap junk batteries because they're like that's where they can save money. So if you buy those things, please, dude, step one, open them up, take the junk batteries out, get rid of them, and put in brand name batteries
Mm-hmm.
because they're big causers of house fires. They sit in utility
Really?
room corner
Wow.
and spontaneously start heating up and burst into flames, and your house is on fire and it's burning down. Like hover around or personal mobility scooters for old people, they have large batteries in them, and so those companies will cut corners by getting junk low end batteries. It's not like at the other end of the spectrum, you have the automotive industry. Those batteries are batteries that they're putting a lot of engineering know-how into and time and effort into because that is the heart of an electric car. You want it to have a good range and you want that battery to last a good long time. And by the way, it's required by federal law to last 10 years or 100,000 miles. So when they tell you, we're so great, we give you a 10-year, 100,000 mile battery warranty. Dude, you're required by federal law for the battery to last 10 years, $100,000. It's not that you're giving me this gracious, great, warranty. You're required by federal law. So car batteries, people like GM right now with their Ultium battery platform, that's a lot of awesome engineering going into that thing.
Yeah.
Those batteries are awesome. Other end of the spectrum, every other product you're buying online with little to medium sized batteries in it.
Yeah.
They
Interesting.
cut the corners by getting a junk battery, usually made by a manufacturer in mainland China, and there, look, we saved so much per unit by not going with a brand name battery company.
What are some of the challenges that attorneys commonly face when proving liability cases and involving complex products like medical devices, for instance?
Well, we don't handle medical devices or
Mm-hmm.
prescriptions, but we do handle anything you'd buy online or automobiles. And the biggest problem we have is that this when it's something you purchase online, it's hurt you, it's damaged your house, maybe or your property. You're very mad and upset in the heat of the moment. Maybe a loved one is in the hospital because of it, and you get rid of it. You throw it away. You got to keep whatever it was, keep it, number one. So whatever you purchased online that didn't work correctly and severely hurt you or your loved ones or your family members, don't throw it away. Number one, you got to have it to prove the case. And number two, don't fiddle with it. don't fiddle with it, because it may be a melted lump at this point. Don't try to peel it apart and figure it out yourself what happened to it. Later on, insurance companies that become involved will claim that you destroyed the evidence by taking that screwdriver and pliers and peeling it apart and trying to figure it out yourself. So don't get rid of it and don't fiddle with it. Just put it off in the corner of the garage and call us so we can get someone over there to take possession of it, look it over, that sort of thing.
What are some common cases that you've seen involving uh, product liability and that sort of thing?
Generally, catastrophic failure of it. It collapses on you. Say, deer stands are poorly manufactured. Cheap deer stands are famous for collapsing, and you're a long way up in the air, and you fall a great distance and break your arm or break a leg. Uh, So catastrophic failure of whatever it is you purchased online. Number two, a lot of it is like batteries will explode on you. There's a lot of really cheap, junky battery manufacturers in the Far East that put their batteries into otherwise just fine products. And that creator of that product is a fine product will put a crappy battery in it and almost turn it into a bomb and then give it to you. Another way products can hurt you is anything involving, like, say, propane, for example. If the valve is not made very well, if the hoses aren't made very well, leaking propane and eventual spark can lead to catastrophic consequences. So
Mm-hmm.
usually the failures are big and immediate. They're not slow.
So, okay. So, yeah, that's I kind of want to go back to something you said earlier about how a good company who manufactures a great product can use a component of their product, for example, a battery that is manufactured by a less reputable company. Let's say that you bought a computer that's great, but they use a battery from a lower end manufacturer, and that results in an explosion or a spark of some sort that causes someone harm. How do you determine, in that case, how do you determine who's responsible? Would it be the computer company or would it be the battery company?
Well, there are lots of things with batteries in them you can purchase online. You just named one, a computer. Another one is like a personal mobility scooter, has a rather large battery in it. Uh, you know, all sorts of little battery packs that go in toys. I've even seen costumes with lights all over them that has a little battery pack in it. So there's lots of batteries. And the answer to your question is it really depends, because you have federal law that governs the importation of stuff. You have federal regulation regarding certain individual products. You have the law of individual states where sitting in California, when you place the order online, or sitting in Kentucky or sitting in Tennessee or sitting in Colorado, it matters. There's a difference. Each state's law is different. It depends on where you're sitting at the time. So you got federal law regarding importation and regulation of individual objects. You have state law that comes into play. So the answer to your question, in some places, would be both the battery manufacturer and the object manufacturer. In other places, it'd be like you'd have a different result. No, it all falls on the object manufacturer. And then you have federal law, which gives you a different answer too. So that's this is the deep end of the legal pool, and it takes a lawyer a while to do the legal research, or a team of lawyers, and figure out the answers to those questions.
Yeah. What are some recent developments or trends in product liability law that you've been seeing that could impact future cases?
Well, one trend I've seen is that online retailers now will have these these resolution dispute links in their website somewhere. So if you're unhappy with the product, you click here, and if you were hurt by the product, click here, and well, send us pictures and tell us about it, and we'll resolve it internally. So they figured out, these product manufacturers, that people may attempt to negotiate with them on their own inside the confines of the online platform by sending pictures. And because they figured out they don't want people talking to attorneys and figuring out everything that happened, they're hoping they can get people to jump at minor little, relatively minor offers to resolve their concerns. So that's a big development, is that online retailers now are figuring out that people will call attorneys who will dig in and investigate and figure out what happened, and they try to head that off by getting you to go through their online dispute process through their web portal. And
Yeah.
so be
You know,
careful with that.
I see a lot of people on Facebook and Meta and that sort of thing, Instagram, they're buying a lot of cheap products from overseas, from China. And China, I guess, ships directly to people here in the United States, right? Alibaba and that sort of thing. If you buy a product from China and you know, it there's an issue that harms you, does it make a difference whether they're in China? Like, can you do anything if they're in China? Do the laws still protect
China,
you?
well, the answer to your question is you can't sue somebody who's only in China and doesn't have any contact with the United States. And so, if you have back to our example, we've been hitting on batteries here. A battery manufacturer only exists in China, and they make their batteries in China, and those batteries are shipped internal to China over to another factory where they install those batteries in a product that then eventually, through the stream of commerce, gets to the United States. That battery manufacturer is not what we call subject to the Hague Convention. You can't sue them under the laws of the United States or the individual states inside the United States. And so then the question becomes, okay, how does the law of the state where you're sitting, do Kentucky, Tennessee, Colorado, handle it when one of the participants in the overall creation of the product, the battery manufacturer, is beyond the power of the law of that state? What do you do? And that depends on each individual state how the law is going to handle that. But it's true,
Interesting.
a lot of manufacturers in China, you can't reach them. You can't get the law to the United States or any state in the United States to apply to them.
Yeah. And so, for example, if you had something like Samsung, that's a Korean company,
Mhm.
but they have stores and they have, facilities here in the United States, even though they're based in Korea, you would have some sort of protection there, right? Because they do business in Korea and in the United States. But if someone is completely like in China and then you bought something from China and they shipped it here, then you know you would have less protection. Is would you say that's correct?
I would say you might not be able to get your hands on all the participants in the creation of the product
Hmm.
if they're overseas and they have no contact with the United States. And let's not pick on China. There's plenty of stuff
Okay.
made in Vietnam and the Philippines and other places in this world. So you can buy something made in France. And if that country in France has no contact with the United States, you might have difficulty with that. But what makes China particularly difficult is they're not a signatory to the Hague Convention.
Hmm.
They do not cooperate with the law and the governments of the United States in holding companies responsible for what they make.
Hmm. So I guess my question for you is, what do you mean by contact? They have no contact with the United States. Um,
They have no legally recognized entity in any state in the United States.
okay.
They don't have a physical presence here in the United States. They don't have any registered agents for
Hmm.
service of lawsuits anywhere in the United States. They are a company organized under the laws of, say, China or
Hmm.
Hong Kong, and their physical structures and manufacturing facilities are all over in either Hong Kong or mainland China. And they just literally just don't have anybody or anything in any part of the United States.
Right. So I guess just for added clarification, that wouldn't be every Chinese company. It wouldn't be every Filipino company or Japanese company or any other. It wouldn't be every foreign company, because there are some companies that have a presence in the U.S., whereas there are some companies that don't. So, for example, if you buy something online that comes from China and it's cheap and it explodes on you, you may not. It may be very difficult to do anything about it. But TikTok and Huawei and all these other companies do have a presence in the U.S., and then you could take legal recourse in that case. Would you say that's correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
And other examples, Tesla is a Chinese company. They manufacture Teslas in China.
Mhm.
They're a United States company. They're here in the United States. You may have seen Volvo cars. Volvo cars, a lot of them are manufactured in China, and they
Interesting.
import them from China. So, would you call Volvo a Chinese company? And by the way, Volvo is owned by a holding company that's Chinese. And
Hmm.
so, don't it has to do with, do the companies have minimum contact? Do they have presence in the United States? And then the next question becomes, okay, if they don't, then how's the law of your individual state going to treat that situation? Some states say, okay, if the manufacturer, in our other example of a battery, just does no contact with some states, those states will say, okay, well, then the person who sold the product is responsible for the product in total. You don't have to
Mhm.
worry about that battery manufacturer.
So how do you establish negligence on the part of the manufacturer in a product liability case?
Number one, don't destroy, don't get rid of whatever it was, and don't fiddle with it, so we can get an expert over to lay eyes on it. Remember how I told you about the internal review process that you're starting to
Mhm.
see pop up on online marketplaces? I represent someone right now who went through that process, and the retailer, the online retailer, sent an expert out who not only looked at but took the product with them. So the person completely lost access to and possession of the product at issue. And now I'm having to negotiate with the online retailer for access for my experts to now look at the object to confirm the online retailer didn't destroy or alter the object we're talking about. So the way you figure it out is, number one, get possession of that object. And the
Mhm.
online retailer, they might get you to engage with them in supposed settlement negotiations just for the purpose of getting their hands on the object so they themselves can, you know, get to the process of figuring out what went wrong here and how can we claim it wasn't our fault. So having experts look at whatever object we're talking about. Same thing with cars. If a car crashes, you got to have an expert look over it to figure out, well, was it some component of the car that caused the crash here?
Mhm. What steps should consumers take if they suspect they've been harmed by a defective product?
Keep the product. Don't fiddle with the product. If it involves your car, then you need to know where your car is, and it's probably sitting in a tow yard that might be charging storage fees. You got to call quickly so we can get out there before the tow yard itself starts fiddling with the car, doing things to the car, so we can look and see what happened here. Why didn't the seat belt pull you back into position or hold you in place? Why didn't the airbag fire? Why did the steering all of a sudden feel soft or wonky? How come the brake went soft on you when you were pressing on it? Was there a manufacturing defect here? We got to get to the car or the product quickly before anybody else has tried to figure it out themselves or fiddled with it or what we call adulterated it, uh,
Mhm.
changed it in some way,
Mhm.
partly taking it apart. You know.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. I guess what a lot of people are probably wondering is how you calculate damages in a product liability case, especially when injuries that result from it are long term and permanent.
It's the same as in a automobile wreck case or a commercial trucking wreck case. You look at how much the past medical charges were, how much are the anticipated future medical charges. You look at things like loss of earning capacity in some states. In other states, it's actual loss of earnings in the future, loss of wages in the past because you've been unable to work as you're on the road to recovery. You look at what would be an appropriate pain and suffering number here, given what people have been through and what it's anticipated they're going to have to go through in the future. Um, Sometimes there's also a loss of household services. So if you're no longer able to keep up your yard and you have to hire somebody to do that, that becomes a damages component. So that's a quick, broad overview of some of the different things you look at and figuring out what is the damages and the harm that was done here that you're asking an online retailer or a manufacturer of a product that's hurt you to compensate you for, make up for what you've been through.
Yeah, that's all really good information. Well, Henry, that's all the time we have for today. Again, I want to thank you so much for agreeing to come on today's episode of the Influential Experts podcast and sharing your invaluable insights on these product liability cases. For our listeners, we hope you found this discussion informative and insightful. If you did, please let us know by liking, commenting, and sharing this episode with others. And if you live in Colorado, Kentucky, or Tennessee and have been injured in an accident and you need representation, visit queenerlaw.com. And from there, you can schedule your free consultation with a personal injury attorney today. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day.